Morning once again, dear parents. My name is Omokorede Fasoro, and it was a privilege sharing with you earlier on during the webinar on the topic empowering your child to achieve personal and academic goals. I've had to do this recording again because something must have gone wrong with the Zoom. It wasn't captured, and so I agreed to do a recording so that the essence of what was shared earlier on hopefully will be captured in this session. So the topic, as we know, is empowering your child to achieve personal and academic goals. Of course, we're in the summer holiday and our children have all the time in the world, and children being children, they don't mind wasting time all day, sleeping from morning till very late, maybe in the afternoon. If nobody wakes them up, some won't bother waking up. We just keep on enjoying the sleep. And then they don't mind being on social media 24/7. And so it is necessary for us as parents to help them at this season to work on their personal and academic goals so that they can make the best of the time that they have at hand. Okay, just a short introduction. My name is Omokorede Fasoro, as I said earlier on, and I am a professional trainer. That's what I do and coach, and also a mother of what I refer to as two generations of children. And there's a reason why I like bringing that up, because parenting for me has been a learning experience, which I believe is the same for many of us, especially considering the fact that one has a wide gap between the oldest child and the youngest child. So we have a child, the oldest will be a child we'll consider as a millennial. And then the youngest will be a child we consider now, I think it's generation, is it a Z or infinity that they refer to? Totally different kinds of mindsets, different ways of seeing things and of doing things. Okay, so when we talk about the word empower, when we say empower, we're basically talking, well, first of all, let me appreciate once again the board of directors, the director of education, Mrs. Adeyemo, the principals, vice principals, staff, and of course, the highly esteemed parents. Thank you for this privilege of sharing with you. So back to the topic on empowering your child to achieve personal and academic goals. When we talk about the word empower or empowering, it basically talks about being able to give our children the right kind of tools, the right kind of power, the right kind of support that they are needed to have the power to be the best in whatever it is they want to do. When a person has power, that person has the ability to do things, to move things, okay, as we say, to move things and to do things. So that is what we're talking about. I would like to start with a quote that I came across by the late Mahatma Gandhi. He said, every home is a university and the parents are the teachers. In essence, the school system only builds on the foundation that we have laid at the home front as parents. But unfortunately, some parents feel that it is the school that will do everything for them. It's the school that will help them to train their child, to nurture their child. No, the school will only build on the foundation that you have laid. It is our responsibility as parents to instill the right kind of values, the right kind of, strengths and potentials in the hearts of our children, so that as they go out into the world, they can manifest what is already inside them. So remember, the home is a university, and we are the teachers, we are the lecturers of the university called the home. I came across this as I found very interesting, which kind of summarizes our responsibilities as parents. It says it's twofold. Healthy parenting is twofold. It involves nurturing. It involves laying structure. And so when we talk about, the aspect of nurturing, we talk about taking care of their basic needs, providing food, medical care, shelter, clothing, showing them love, giving them attention, understanding, letting them know that they're accepted, making time for them, because time is a language every child understands, giving them the necessary support that they need, being listening parents, having listening ears, paying attention to what they say, no matter how funny or unimportant it sounds, being there to listen, being patient with them, of course, having fun with them. That's part of nurturing. And we do this through the words we speak to them. We do this through our actions, which we communicate to them to show that they are loved and they are accepted. And then when we talk about us as parents, the second aspect, we talks about structure. It talks about giving direction. It talks about, showing them the way. It talks about imposing rules. It talks about giving direction, as I said earlier on, discipline. It talks about setting limits, setting boundaries, establishing and then following through, and with consequences if they should disobey or do some things wrong, being able to hold them accountable, not making excuses for them. Okay, letting them to be accountable for their behavior, and of course, modeling the right kind of behavior, teaching them, because children learn best by what they see. So it's no longer a case of do as I say, but don't do as I do. I mean, the children of this generation will ask you questions. They will challenge you. They are more vocal. In our own times, for instance, if our parents would say, do this, we didn't even have a voice. For instance, if your father says or your mother says, jump, the only question you're permitted to ask is, Daddy, Mommy, how long do I jump? Or how high should I jump? But the children of this generation will ask you why, what, when, where, how. They, they are bolder and they are more confident. So we need to be careful that we model the right kind of values to these children for them to copy. And of course, in the context of the presentation today, it's about helping them also to identify their strengths, their gifts, their talents, their passion, their purpose, and helping them to set and to achieve their life goals. Okay, so that is what the context of what we're talking about. And we also mentioned that we need to make them a part of the process. When we're talking about goal setting and planning, it's not a case of us as parents just coming with a template and dropping it on the laps of the child, telling the child, this is what you should start doing. No, it's about making them a part of the process, carrying them along so that they also can own it. So as parents, part of what we should also do, part of the structure, we talk about nurture and structure, twofold. Part of the structuring part of it is that we also help them to visualize, to set, and to pursue their life goals. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 22, verse 6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So it is what we instill in them from a young age that the children will carry. In fact, I've heard testimonies of children going away from the way of God, getting rebel. But after a while, years after, the silent voices of their parents, of the little things they taught them over time, the values that were instilled in them over time, we begin to find expression in them. And many times, such children always find their way back to the very foundation that they received while growing up. Okay, so we go on. So what exactly is a goal? A goal is simply something you would like to achieve within a certain time. What something that you would like to achieve within a certain time. So there's a time factor. There's there's the thing, the objective, that thing you're going for, and of course, there's always a time factor. But when it comes to goal setting, there's what we call the beginning, and that is being able to come up with a vision. So it begins with a vision. It begins with being able to visualize the future. And that is part of what we're there to do as parents, to help our children. And let's ask them questions. What do you see, about your future? Where do you see yourself 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? These are discussions we should engage with at the home front. Remember, the home is a university, and as parents, we are the teachers. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2 says, The Lord answered me and said, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads with it. So what we should ask them, what do you see? And then once they are able to conceptualize or visualize what they desire, what they see, which will encourage them to put it down. You know, what this also does is that it gives us an opportunity to know what is inside the hearts of our children. You know, for all you know, some of these children, their role models might be some of these wayward artists around that they see as the epitome of in fact, some call them idols. They're idols. The epitome, they see them as the epitome of the perfection of perfection of success. You know, so it's important for us to help them to visualize correctly. And like I said earlier on, I mean, this is a quote by Walt Disney. He said, you can dream it. If you can dream it, you can do it. I mean, his story is so amazing. His life story is such an amazing story from a very young age, how he began to visualize, you know, having a place where people will be happy. Of course, with his artistic gifts, he could draw, he could design. It's a very beautiful story. We know he is left now, he's no longer alive, but his works are still speaking. And we have Disney parks all over the world creating fun and joy for families. Okay, so I also mentioned 4 inspiring films that I believe that every child should watch. I mean, even if not all, at least 2 of these films. As parents during these holidays, they're available on Netflix, on Prime TV. So please let's invest. If we need to buy, we can buy. If we need to pay subscription so that we can enjoy on online, please let's do that. Let's do that so that the children can also learn from the stories of these people. We have the case of this boy, the boy who harnessed the wind. Very amazing story of a young boy who had a vision, who had a dream to, you know, make water readily available in his village. He also had a passion for science, for the sciences, and he began to read and understood and learned about the wind energy. That there's a way you can make the wind to produce power that can make water available. And of course, what he desired, what he visualized, became a reality. So much that the whole world got to hear about him, and a film was made about his life story. The second one is Hidden Figures. It's the story of 3 Black American women who, during the times of the segregation in America, I mean, very smart, intelligent women, but you know, they were kept in one corner just to be doing their work in NASA. And part of the work they did, especially one of them, you know, helped America in sending a man to space. The story is Hidden Figures, is another story, very inspiring and motivating. The third one is the story of Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson. It's called Gifted Hands. Wonderful story. A young man who grew up believing that he was a dullard, that he didn't know anything, he was a dullard. You know, he kept telling his mom, Mom, I'm dumb, Mom, I'm dumb, I don't know anything. But his mother kept telling you, no, you can be whatever it is you can be. You can even do it better. So he never saw anything good about himself. He thought he was a dullard. I mean, people, his classmates used to make fun of him because, of course, he was always at the bottom of the ladder. Well, thank God for a mother, a parent that was there to inspire him. She set some rules in the household, cut the number of hours of TV, and began to send them to the library to read. And of course, the more he read, the more he saw that he actually could understand. He actually was not a dumb child. He understood. He now saw that all he needed was a power to imagine, and of course, with hard work. And of course, he went on to become a great success, one of a world-renowned pediatric neurosurgeon, well-known until his retirement from Johns Hopkins University. So the story of Ben Carson, there's a book called Gifted Hand, and also the film Gifted Hand. So please, Let's try to lay our hands on this and encourage our children. And the last one that I have here, there are many others, but I just felt I should mention this four. October Sky, also a true life story. A young man with his friend, they used to visualize while growing up, in the countryside about rockets. They used to dream about rockets. They used to, try to build rocket from scrap. Very interesting story. To cut a long story short, he ended up becoming an aerospace engineer with NASA. What he had visualized together with his friends from a very young age became a reality. So this, these are highly recommended books, because many of the children nowadays don't like reading. They are more visually inclined. So I believe these films will really be a blessing. Okay, so when we've helped them in the visualizing process, one other thing that can help us is to encourage them to develop what is referred to as a vision board. A vision board. What's a vision board? Very simple. It's just a board that has pieces of pictures that kind of, you know, gives an impression of what that child desires to be, or where that child desires to go, or what that child desires to become. Okay. So, for instance, a child that says, oh, one day I would like to become a doctor or a pediatric neurosurgeon like Ben Carson. So, on his vision board, I would expect to see pictures of doctors, maybe pictures of stethoscope, pictures of maybe different him or her graduating, different things that, kinds of tells the child, gives an impression of what that child aspires to go or where to be or where he or she aspires to go. So all you just need a pair of scissors, old newspapers, old magazines, maybe some crayons, clay, glue that they can cut out and paste on the board. And when that is done, they come up with something like this. And what does that do? So the child can now place that on the wall in the room. And each day, he or she sees that, it begins to, become an impression in their mind. This is possible. This is doable. Like I shared during the session earlier on, these are uh, tools that we have applied, we have used in the lives of our children. I remember many years ago when they were much younger, we would gather the whole family. At the end of the year, we'd go off somewhere, maybe to a hotel somewhere, nice place, to give them a treat. But normally we would go with our crayons, our old magazines, scissors, pairs of scissors, cardboard paper, and then, of course, maybe one or two films for them to watch. And what would we usually tell them? We say, okay, now we want you to begin to visualize your future, and also in particular, the new year that we're going into. Begin to visualize what are the things you would desire to see happen to you in every area of your life, in your academics, your career, your personal life, whatever it is, what are the goals you want to set for yourself? And then we'll come up with a vision board to kind of give the images that would align with what it is that they desire to see. And I tell you, we got amazing results, because with children, you just need to sell an idea to a child. Once the child catches it, he will begin to run with that fire. Some people were just doing it, and little by little, our children started embracing the message of visioning, the message of goal setting, the message of planning. And like I shared earlier during the webinar, in particular, I mentioned the case of my son, who, while in primary school, was just like an average, maybe a bit above average, but from junior secondary, and when we began to teach them all these principles, he just caught that vision. I said, Mommy, I want to represent Nigeria one day. I want to represent my school, and I also want to represent Nigeria in an international competition. I'm like, wow, okay. And so guess what? He now began to look around, okay, which subjects can I really zero into? And he realized that he had a passion for biology because he likes drawing. He likes drawing a lot. And so maybe the pictures in biology textbooks was a kind of, attracted him and inspired him. And so Right from junior secondary, whenever he's home, he would go online, download questions of International Biology Olympiad. I even used to complain then that, oh, why are you wasting so much paper? You are wasting ink. But that young man was on fire. I mean, like I said, when children catch the fire, they are unstoppable. And so, little by little, he started excelling in biology. Before we knew it, the school went for biology Olympiad. They asked him to represent the school. He won at regional, local level, him and a group of people, local level. Then at the state level, he was one of those that went to represent the state at the national in Abuja. Before we knew it, he came first overall and was asked to go and represent Nigeria at the International Biology Olympiad in Asia. I think it was Singapore. Second year again, he won again, went to represent Nigeria in another Asian country, probably China, Taipei, if I'm not mistaken, Taiwan. What happened? The power of vision. So the vision took a boy that was just a little above average and helped him to identify the strengths and the passion inside him. And he began to run with it, set goals for himself. That time he didn't even used to have time for anything. It was always biology, reading biology, studying biology. And of course, it took him to the very top. And today, to the glory of God, he's a PhD student in microbiology. That could only have been God and the power of visioning. Like I also said, there's a part we have to play, okay? God has his own part to play. Our part. Proverbs 16:1 says, it is for man to plan his ways. That verse 9 of that Proverbs 16 says, the answer of the tongue comes from God. So it is our own responsibility to do the visioning, the goal setting, the planning. And when we bring this before God in the place of prayer, it is God's responsibility to give us answers to our prayers. Okay, so let's go on. So goal setting, like I said before, a goal is something you hope to achieve, and it motivates you to turn your vision into reality. So vision without goal setting is just daydreaming. You're just daydreaming. And I'm sorry to say that is the reality of many people. They have great visions, great ideas of what they want to accomplish, but they don't set any goals. So they're just daydreaming. And some even enter into depression because of that. So take that vision from the level of just writing it down as a vision, begin to set goals. So when you set goals, it helps you to know where to concentrate your efforts, your time, and your resources. You know, you will not dissipate energy. Like the story of the young man I mentioned earlier, whose goal was to be the best in biology, to represent his country in an international competition. And so he devoted his energy to the study of the sciences, in particular biology, and got his results. So gold will cover every area of our lives. You know, I also mentioned that as parents, we need to also set goals because we cannot give what we do not have. We need to set goals in of our careers, our family life, financial goals. You know, the year is half gone now. We're about entering the last quarter of the year. Have we set financial goals for ourselves? Have we set our minds, oh, this is what I want to save by the end of this year. This is what I desire to make in this year. It's not too late. We still have at least another 5 months to go. So physical, attitude, spiritual. And then begin to ask yourself, where do I see myself 2, 5, 10, 15, and so on years from now? Of course, our goals need to be smart. Our goals must be specific. They must be measurable. They must be attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Back to the example of the young man that I used earlier on, okay? You should be able to define the goal. The goal he defined was that I want to be best in biology. I want to represent Nigeria in an international competition. So that is specific. It's also measurable, and it's also attainable because he didn't just come up with that goal in SS3. That would have been almost impossible. But it was from junior secondary from I think GS3 that he came up with that goal and he began to position himself. In fact, as a matter of fact, the moment he desired that, he went to meet the biology teacher in school. I said, uncle, will you teach me biology? So the teacher used to give me extra lessons. He would go, he read the textbooks front and back. So it has to be attainable. And then, of course, relevance must be results oriented and time bound. He set a time that, the time by the time I'm in my senior secondary, it's so X number of years, I want to represent Nigeria. So whatever the goal is or the goals are, as the case might be, they need to be smart. I came across this quote. I love quotes a lot. Earl Nightingale said, people will go succeed because they know where they're going. Because goals helps them to chart their path, their direction. I mean, look at the football pitch. When the ball that is, being dribbled around, and then maybe the forward or the striker, I'm not very good in football. Maybe it's the striker or the forward that is running with that ball towards the goal post. He knows where he's going. He wants to get that ball inside that goal post. And the moment that happens, everybody shouts and say it is a goal because that ball went directly into the place where it's supposed to go into. So when we have goals, it helps us to succeed because it gives us direction and we know where we're going. So the process, okay, is simply this. Like I said before, it starts with a vision. You must have a vision, a picture of where you're going, a picture of what you desire. As it relates to our children now, help them to visualize, to come up with dream, even no matter how silly it might sound. Don't shut them up. Even if a child says, oh, one day I'm going to be the president of this country. One day I'm going to build my own country. Whatever it is, let's hear them out. Help them to visualize, come up with a vision statement, to write it down. Help them to develop goals. Okay, you want to become the president, or you want to win a scholarship in your when you're going into university. I've heard of amazing things. There's a friend of mine that she said her daughter, right from a young age, told her, Mommy, I'm not studying in Nigeria. I'm going to America to study for my university. And of course, the mother, the parents looked at them and said, how is that possible? What do we have? But guess what? That young girl set her heart on that. She had that vision and she came up with goals. Of course, it determined how hard she studied. It determined the kind of grades, the way she positioned herself to have outstanding results, both at the SAT, at the WAEC, IGCSE, all the exams she needed to do. She made sure she excelled. She set goals for herself to excel. Why? Because ultimately, her plan is to study in the US. To cut a long story short, that young lady got a fully funded scholarship to study in the United States. All things are possible. And of course, when we have goals, we must also develop plans. So back to the example of that young lady, she had the goal and then she began to develop plans. How many hours will I read a day? How will I study? What will I do? And so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the process. Once again, inspire them to have a vision. Help them read books, introduce them to books. Let them watch films. Let them watch documentaries. Tell them about great people, that have accomplished great things. If there are some that you can even tell them to visit such people. Maybe you have access to really successful people that are genuinely successful, genuinely successful. If you have access to some, you can take them to visit such people or take them to places where they'll be inspired. I recall at a time when, keen to the story of the hidden figures, those three ladies. I think they were mathematicians they were geniuses. And at a time I traveled and one of my daughters, we went outing because even when I take them out, it's always intentional. It's not just, we just don't go out anyhow, just having fun. It must be purposeful. So I took her to a planetarium to see, you know, like a museum where they have all sorts of things relating to space travel. We saw some rockets, and guess what? We now go to a place where we saw a mainframe computer, massive computer, actually devoted to those ladies in the Hidden Figure film. She had watched that film and she saw the table. In fact, it was so much that they even left their mug, you know, the calculator they were using, the pencil they were using, the rulers they were using. They arranged everything in that corner devoted to those ladies in the Hidden Figures. And I told her, I said, see, can you see that because of the impact these ladies made, see, they're even being celebrated in an international museum. And do you know what that did for her? It fired that zeal, that passion inside her. Today, to the glory of God, that young lady, you know, is functioning in the aerospace industry. All things are possible. So help them to visualize, help them to develop the plan, and of course, help them, encourage them to have a strategic plan. Tell them, okay, how do you want to go about this? What do you want to do every day? Okay, what do you want to do? What should you do every week, every month? Okay, to accomplish this. Okay, you want to get an A in this particular subject. What level are you now? What do you not know? What topics do you have problems with? Okay, so how will you, what are those things you can, what are the skills you can acquire to help you get better in that subject? Okay, and then of course, we begin to take steps to execute the plan. This quote says, a goal without a plan is just a wish. That's the reality. So remember we said earlier that a vision without goal, it's just daydreaming. You're just daydreaming. Then, if you have goals, but you don't have a plan, the step-by-step plan, how you will accomplish the goals, you're just wishing, and that shouldn't be. So this is something I came across, which I believe it simplifies this process. It talks about the personal and the academic goals. So it's something we could share with our children. Maybe I will share the soft copy online, so that, with the video that is being sent, so that we can just download and print out and get our children to feel it and say, okay, what's your academic goal? Okay, now what are the steps you want to take in accomplishing this goal? We can even make copies for them and then let them write this out, maybe for each subject or various areas of their lives. Okay, so like we said before, it's not just about planning, but the action must follow that plan. We must take steps to walk the plan. Okay, we must walk it, W-A-L-K. We must also work it, W-O-R-K. So the plan should not just stay in one place. There must be action. And as they begin to make progress, no matter how small, please, as parents, let us learn to celebrate them. I know it's good to drive our children, but at the same time, we must still do it with compassion, with empathy, with love, with patience. So no matter how much, if a child, for instance, say, my goal this holiday, one of my goals this holiday is that I will cut down social media to just 2 hours a day. And the child is able to achieve, don't say, is it not just social media? Celebrate that child, because that will encourage that child to go on more. Okay? Or the child says, oh, my goal, I want to get an A. I got C or D last time. I must get an A. And the child returns and gets a B and does not get an A. Please still celebrate that child, because at least the child has made an effort. So whatever the result, no matter how small, let's learn to celebrate. Let's learn to be their encouragers. The story of Ben Carson, one thing his mother really used to do was to encourage him all the way. She encouraged that man into success. And God also blessed him with another wonderful woman, his wife, who was also a super encourager. And of course, if there's a need, he could reward. But like I said earlier, it doesn't have to be money. Because when you start using money to be rewarding a child, I don't think it's really the best, okay? We can give pocket money, But don't say, if you do this, I will give you this 50, I'll give you 500, and I give you, we can reward, maybe with tokens, maybe with gifts, maybe with special outings, maybe special locations. I pray that God will give us wisdom as we do that. Okay. So, in conclusion, this is a quote by Lee Haney, and it says, parents must lead by example. Don't use the cliche, do as I say and not as I do. We are our children's first and foremost important role models. So very true. Our children are watching. So in essence, if we want to teach them about goal setting, we must also look inwards. Have we also set goals for our lives? Do we even have visions for our lives? Have we set goals? Do we have career goals? Do we have professional goals? Do we have business goals? Do we have family goals? Do we have our spiritual goals? Do we have goals? Even for our homes, our marriages, do we have goals? Aside from having goals, have we developed plans? Have we begun to take steps in seeing the fulfillment of these goals? So I want to also encourage us as parents, let's also reflect on what we have also heard today and go back to our own lives. In fact, we could even do it with the children. I mean, like there's experience I shared that we used to do, we still try to do it, although everybody is all over the place now. We try as much, even if it is via Zoom, to do it towards the end of the year. Okay, we still try to do that. So we also we don't just say go and do your goals or come up with your vision board. No, we also do ours, and then we also make presentations to the children. We'll say, oh, that you had present your goals for the year, and you'll be telling us, in my business I want to do this, in my career I desire this, spiritually I desire this, and I also will make my own presentation. So that steers the children and makes them see that it's a serious matter, that if my parents could also pay attention to this thing, that means it's a serious matter, and it really inspires them a lot. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I hope you have been blessed. And in the course of the teaching, the webinar rather, we had 2 questions. I'll try to recall the questions. I know the first one asked about how she talked about having a set of twins where, I think that was the second question, where one seems to be more up there academically than the other one. And I recall that the encouragement we gave her was that, number one, we need to realize that it's not every child that will come first. It's not every child that will that have a first class. It's good, it's wonderful, and then children are at different stages. Some are late starters, some start early, some don't begin to really manifest that greatness until when they get to college. I've heard of instances of some children that just had an average result in secondary school. By the time they got to university, they just picked up and came out with a first class. So children, we need to understand that as parents. And also one of the other things I mentioned was that there's a need for us as parents to help our children to discover the innate abilities and potentials that they have inside them. So the moment a child is able to identify what he's passionate about, because there are ways that we actually drive these children that does not align with the passion of that child. For instance, a child that is arts-oriented. I gave the example of a young lady earlier on in our school where I'm involved. She was already in senior secondary, but I think her parents forced her to go into the sciences. But this young lady had a heart for the arts. I mean, that was where her heart was gravitating towards. And so we took her through some counseling, profiling tests and all that. And that came out. We were a bit concerned because she was in SS2, that how can you suddenly change to art in SS2? But guess what? She did excellently well. Why? Because she was in her element. She was in the right place where she was supposed to be. So sometimes as parents, we need to be careful that we're not driving the children outside what their passion is. So let's help in that instance, of the lady with the twin. The one that appears to be down there, let's try to help him or her identify what he's passionate about. I gave the example of Chinua Achebe, late Chinua Achebe, author of Things Fall Apart. He died a couple of years ago, but Things Fall Apart till today is still being celebrated all over the world. It's been translated to over 50 languages. It is a book that is used as a text in universities across the world. I mean, when you look at the story is just about a village setting in eastern Nigeria. But the power of the message in that story is something that is still speaking many years after Chinua Achebe had passed on. And when I read the story of Chinua Achebe, I understood that he was actually admitted either for pharmacy or medicine. But before the end of the first year, he discovered that he had a passion for writing. He left medical line and pursued his passion for literature. Imagine if he had been forced to become a doctor or to become a pharmacist or nurse or whatever, you probably never have heard of him. But he pursued his life passion, his life purpose as, a literary person in writing. And today, his voice is still being heard all over the world, even after many years that he has left the world. So every child has the potential to be a star. Every child has a purpose. Every child has an assignment. And it's part of our responsibility as parents to help them harness that, to identify that thing that is inside them so that they can bring it out. So I think the first question too was similar to this. Basically, the summary of it is that every child children are different levels. Some are late starters, some start early. Let's be patient with them. As long as we know that we have dealt with the externals that can be, distracting a child, that can make a child lazy. For instance, social media. Some might be hooked on social media. If we can help them, withdraw those things, distractions of TV, distractions of games, all those things around them. Once those has been dealt with, let's help the child to harness the passion, the gift, and the potential inside that child. Whatever the situation of that child, even if the child has special needs, it does not matter. I shared my own story earlier on, where God has blessed us with a special needs son. And sometimes I wonder, the one before him is an A-star student, first class material. The one after him, first star, and God decided to put him in between. So will I say that God is wrong? But then, even with the special needs, I know that child has a purpose. So whatever the level our children might be in life, let us know that every child is a star. So thank you so very much for listening.